What's up, guys? It's Cam from Black Swan Financial with another quick earnings alert update for you. Today, I'm taking a look at Apple. Ticker is AAPL. Current stock price as of close of business today is about $145.43. Now, I know you're probably familiar with Apple, but you're probably a little less familiar with their business model. So here's a little background for you. Apple, they design, manufacture, and market smartphones, personal computers, tablets, wearables such as the iWatch, and they also offer a range of services such as the iCloud, their payment services, advertising services, and they have the App Store that we're all familiar with. I was at a conference just last week, and one of the presenters, they introduced a stat. They said 60% of the US population actually uses an iPhone. So think about that when you think about this stock. Now, just looking at their revenue breakdown, 52% of their sales actually come from selling the iPhone, and 20% of their sales actually come from services. Now, the other thing to consider is the majority of their sales actually come from outside the United States. If you look at their global footprint altogether, 57% of their revenue comes from outside of the Americas. So North America, South America, outside of those two areas there. And 25% of their sales come from Europe. So one of the key risk factors that you want to consider with this stock is their exposure to the global macroeconomic environment altogether. As a matter of fact, if you read through their financials, their 10K, this is actually the number one risk factor that they cite. So specifically, they're worried about inflation, slower economic growth, a recession, tighter credit, and higher interest rates altogether, which is exactly the environment that we're in. So expectations for this earnings announcement that's coming up, this is going to be a tough one. The other thing to consider is Apple is actually the only tech company that has not announced layoffs at this point. So I fully expect if they don't announce it tomorrow in the earnings release down the line, we're going to see that they announce some layoffs as well. Nonetheless, over the past 5 years, if you look at Apple, they've actually outperformed the S&P 500, they've outperformed the Dow Jones, and they've outperformed the S&P Tech Index as well. So phenomenal in terms of the overall stock performance. There are 46 analysts that have put out recommendations on this stock, and the average price target for them is $168.96 over the next 12 months, which means over the next 12 months, if that prediction turns out to be right, you're looking at roughly a 16% upside. 16%, which is pretty good. Some of the banks that are actually pretty bullish on this, JP Morgan, Wells Fargo, KeyBank, just to name a few. Me particularly, I own this stock. I've got about 10,000 in my current position outside of mutual funds. Key considerations with the earnings call, as I mentioned, they're the only tech company that has not announced layoffs at this point. So fully expect that's going to be in the cards with this Q1 earnings release. Another thing to point out, actually September is the end of their fiscal year. So you may be confused as to why we're looking at the Q1 earnings tomorrow, but that's the reason why we're expecting the Q1 earnings tomorrow. The other thing is supply chain issues with the launch of the iPhone 14. They had a number of supply chain issues. That seems to have smoothed out based on the data that's come through, but we'll see the full impact of how things are trending there. Also, the macroeconomic slowdown, as I mentioned, 25% of their sales come from Europe, so that's a key consideration. They're also in the process of doing a transformation to a services business. And remember, the services business has margins of 71%. So pretty phenomenal there altogether. And with everything that's going on globally, the US dollar has been pretty strong as well. So if you compare the strength of the USD and when they have to repatriate those funds from across the globe, Europe, and all the other geographies, that's going to impact their bottom line as well. So those are the considerations. Me personally, I would wait until after the earnings to pick up some additional stock to add to your position if you already own the stock. Overall, I think they're a market leader, but this quarter, the results are going to be pretty tough.